If my train is junk, does that mean Grandpa was junk too? Ethan's little voice cracked, his eyes red and wet with tears. The words hit Emily like a knife. Her 7-year-old grandson clung to her, his small hands trembling as he tried to understand why the toy train she had given him, a train she'd chosen with love, engraved with his name and his grandfather's, was lying in the trash can, covered in coffee grounds. Emily's chest tightened. She pulled the boy close, holding him against her heart. "No, my darling, never." But she couldn't say the words out loud. Instead, she silently vowed she would never let their family's history, Michael's memory, or Ethan's innocence be treated as garbage again. At that moment, Emily knew this wasn't just about a toy. This was about everything. The truth was, Emily had spent weeks preparing for Ethan's birthday. At 68, a retired elementary school teacher, she lived quietly in her modest suburban home. Her late husband, Michael, had been a meticulous accountant who loved trains, collecting model sets, sketching stations, teaching their son David the difference between steam and diesel. After Michael passed, those trains became more than toys. They were fragments of a life, a legacy Emily carefully guarded. So when she saw a limited edition collector's train, polished brass engines with wooden cars, she didn't hesitate. $300 was a steep price on her pension, but she told herself, this isn't just a toy, this is a bridge between generations. She even had Ethan's name carved into the caboose, alongside the year of his birth. It was a way of saying, your grandfather's love is still here, running on these tracks. She wrapped the train in tissue paper, placed it in a sturdy box, and tied it with a red satin ribbon. As she tucked the receipt and certificate of authenticity into an envelope, she slipped in a tiny AirTag, an old habit from Michael. Always track what matters, he used to say. When the day came, Emily wore her pearl earrings and her soft blue cardigan. She baked Ethan's favorite vanilla cake from scratch. Her son David arrived, distracted as always, talking about deadlines and construction projects. His wife, Sophia, breezed in wearing a crisp white blouse and carrying an expensive handbag. She handed Emily a perfumed gift bag with a smile that never reached her eyes. Inside was a bottle of designer lotion, the kind that cost more than Emily's weekly groceries. But Emily's focus was on Ethan. She placed the box in his lap, heart pounding. The boy's face lit up when he lifted the lid. "Grandma, a train, just like the ones you told me Grandpa loved." His excitement was pure, golden. Emily's eyes misted. For a fleeting moment, the world felt right. Then, Sophia's voice cut through like glass. "Oh, Emily, it's sweet, but we don't need clutter. Our house is already full. Junk like that just sits around." She waved her manicured hand as if brushing the gift aside. David didn't defend his mother. He stared at his phone, pretending not to hear. Ethan's joy dimmed. He looked from the train to his mother's face, then back to his grandmother. He hugged the caboose to his chest, whispering, "I love it, Grandma." Emily smiled bravely, though her heart ached. That night, after everyone left, she stepped outside with a bag of recycling. The lid of the trash bin stood slightly ajar. Something inside caught her eye, a gleam of brass, a smear of coffee. She reached in, and her breath caught. The train. Ethan's train. Michael's memory. Her gift. All of it was buried beneath paper towels and half-eaten takeout. She pulled it out, damp and stained, her hands shaking. And then she heard it. Through the open kitchen window came Sophia's laughter. "We don't need her junk. We just need her to sign the papers. David's too weak to push her, but I will." Emily froze. "Papers? Sign?" The words echoed in her mind, blending with the sight of Ethan's tear-streaked face. Junk. Grandpa. Legacy. The pieces began to form a pattern she didn't yet understand, but one thing was certain. She was under attack, not just as a mother-in-law, but as the keeper of her family's history. As she carried the ruined train inside, Emily whispered to herself, "They think I'm weak. They think I'll surrender." She glanced at Michael's old study, the door still shut, the key still hidden in her drawer. Somewhere in there lay more than memories. There lay the power to fight back. And Emily, shaken but resolute, knew the war for her legacy had just begun. The smell of vanilla cake filled Emily's kitchen as she carefully arranged candles shaped like a bright red number 7. It was Ethan's big day. The house, though modest, looked festive. Blue streamers across the living room, paper plates stacked neatly on the dining table, a little banner reading happy birthday in cheerful letters. Emily had always believed children deserved memories more than material things. But this year, she had poured herself into both a homemade celebration and the collector's train that symbolized a bridge from past to future. The doorbell rang. David arrived first, balancing a bag of store-bought cupcakes in one arm and scrolling through his phone with the other. "Hey, Mom," he said distractedly, leaning down for a half-hearted hug. Traffic was crazy. Emily smiled, even as her heart pinched at his distance. "Come in, dear. Ethan's in the yard with his friends." Sophia followed moments later, her heels clicking against the tile. She swept into the room with the polished confidence of a woman used to boardrooms, not backyards. "Emily," she said, handing over a glossy shopping bag. Inside was a luxury brand hoodie for Ethan, tags still dangling, price likely close to $150. "Kids love this brand right now. He'll be the coolest boy in class." Emily thanked her politely, though she felt the sting of comparison. Her handmade cake and thoughtful toy would be judged against logos and labels. She straightened her back. It doesn't matter. What matters is love. Soon, the house was full of children's laughter, wrapping paper flying, and balloons bouncing around the living room. Ethan unwrapped video games from classmates, a soccer ball from a neighbor, and the hoodie from his mother. Then Emily placed the satin ribboned box in front of him. His small fingers tugged the bow loose. The lid lifted. The gleam of polished brass filled the room. Ethan gasped, eyes wide. "A train! Grandma, it's beautiful." He lifted the caboose, spotting his name engraved along the side. "Look, everyone, it has my name on it." The other children leaned closer, fascinated. For a moment, the room pulsed with pure joy. Emily's heart swelled as Ethan hugged her, whispering, "It's like Grandpa's trains, isn't it?" She nodded, blinking back tears. "Yes, my love, just like Grandpa's." But then came the ice. Sophia's laugh was smooth, practiced. "Emily, that's very traditional." Her lips curved into a smile, but her eyes glittered with disdain. "You know how kids are these days? They want tablets, drones, things they can actually use, not dusty collectibles." The word landed like a slap. Dusty. Obsolete. Junk. Emily felt heat rise to her cheeks. She wanted to defend the gift, to explain its meaning, but Ethan spoke first. "I love it, Mom. It's from Grandpa too, right?" His small voice cracked, desperate for his mother's approval. Sophia's smile thinned. "Sweetheart, it's fine if you like it, but let's keep it at Grandma's house, okay? Our home doesn't need more clutter." She turned her head toward David, her voice syrupy. "Isn't that right, honey?" David hesitated, then nodded quickly, eyes fixed on the floor. "Yeah, our place is already packed." The air thickened with tension. The other children shifted uncomfortably. Emily forced a smile, masking the pain tearing through her chest. "Ethan, darling, you can keep the train here whenever you visit Grandma. It'll always be waiting for you." Ethan's shoulders slumped, though he nodded obediently. He placed the caboose gently back in the box, his fingers lingering as though afraid to let go. The rest of the party continued in a blur. Cake was eaten, candles blown out, photos snapped for social media. Yet beneath the noise, Emily's ears buzzed with silence, the silence of being dismissed in her own son's eyes, of being diminished in her daughter-in-law's presence. After the guests left, Emily tidied the plates and cups, while Sophia chatted with David about new SUVs, panoramic sunroofs, and luxury financing options. She spoke of upgrades, of things they deserved. The words grated, each one sharpening the line between her world of meaning and theirs of appearances. Later, as Sophia prepared to leave, she pulled Emily aside. Her tone was polite, but her words cut deep. "Emily, I know you mean well, but maybe next time you could give Ethan something a little more modern. He needs to keep up with the times." Emily swallowed hard. Her voice stayed calm, though her hands trembled. "Sophia, what children need most is love, not labels." Sophia's eyes flickered, a trace of contempt flashing before she slipped her mask back into place. "Of course." "Well, thanks for hosting." The front door closed. Silence fell. Emily walked to the corner where the train box sat, unopened since Ethan placed it down. She lifted the lid again, running her fingers across the carved letters of his name. Her chest ached, not just for herself, but for the boy caught between two worlds, one built on legacy, the other on vanity. And though she didn't yet know it, that night would mark the start of a battle not for a toy, but for the soul of her family. The party was over. The streamers sagged, half-deflated balloons drifted across the floor, and the once cheerful house was quiet again. Emily stood at the sink, rinsing sticky plates, trying to shake off the uneasy weight that had settled on her chest. She told herself not to dwell on Sophia's words, not to replay David's silence, but the image of Ethan's slumped shoulders gnawed at her. The evening air was cool as Emily carried a bag of recycling toward the curb. The moon hung pale above the rooftops, casting long shadows across her yard. She pushed open the heavy lid of the green trash bin to toss in the bottles and cardboard. And then she froze. At first, it was just a glint of brass in the darkness, a shape that didn't belong among the black plastic bags and damp newspapers. She leaned closer, her heart beginning to pound. With trembling hands, she reached in and pulled. It was the train. The collector's engine she had searched for months to find. The wooden caboose with Ethan's name carved into it. Michael's memory, Ethan's joy, her gift of love, all of it lay smeared with coffee grounds, tangled in soggy paper towels, stained with streaks of ketchup. Emily's breath caught. For a moment, the world tilted. The smell of garbage stung her nose as tears blurred her vision. She clutched the ruined toy to her chest, feeling its damp weight press against her cardigan. A sharp laugh sliced through the night. Emily turned her head toward the open kitchen window. Sophia's voice carried easily into the yard, clear and cruel. "I'm telling you, Karen," she said on the phone, "it was the ugliest thing I've ever seen, like something dragged out of a thrift store. She actually thought I'd put it on display. Please. I kept it in the closet for a week, just to be polite, but today I couldn't take it anymore. Good riddance." Emily stood frozen, the train in her hands, humiliation burning through her. Then came the words that chilled her blood. "We don't need her junk," Sophia continued, her tone dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "We just need her to sign the papers. Mark's too weak to push, but once she signs, we'll finally have control. The house, the account, it'll all be ours." The house, the account. Emily's pulse thundered in her ears. Her knees nearly gave out. She leaned against the cold rim of the trash bin, trying to steady herself. The picture snapped into place. The forced smiles, the constant talk of upgrades, the sudden kindness about helping with her guest room. It hadn't been generosity, it had been a strategy. Predators, she realized, and she was the prey. Emily swallowed hard, forcing her hands to stop shaking. She pulled the ruined train fully from the bin and held it close. Her chest ached, but something colder than grief was forming there, something hard, like stone. She turned away from the curb, leaving the lid of the trash can swinging open. Step by step, she walked back toward the house, the soiled toy heavy in her arms. She didn't go into the kitchen. She didn't let Sophia see her face streaked with silent tears. Instead, she slipped inside through the back door and moved down the hall like a ghost. In the quiet of her laundry room, she set the train gently on a towel. Her fingers lingered on the engraved letters of Ethan's name, now smeared with grime. A whisper escaped her lips. "They think love is trash. They think I'm weak." Her gaze lifted to the closed door of Michael's old study, the one she hadn't entered in months. Behind that door lay more than photographs and dusty books. It held documents, plans, and the careful foresight of a man who had always believed in preparation. Emily wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. The humiliation still burned, but beneath it, another fire began to glow. It wasn't just anger, it was resolve. She straightened her shoulders. If Sophia thought she could erase Michael's memory, discard Emily's love, and strip Ethan of his inheritance, she was gravely mistaken. Clutching the ruined toy one last time, Emily whispered a promise into the stillness. "You may have thrown away a train, but you just awakened something you'll never control." And with that, the battle for her family's future truly began. The next afternoon, the house was unusually quiet. Emily had spent the morning trying to clean the train, rinsing away the stains, scrubbing gently at the brass engine, but no matter how careful she was, the damage clung. The ivory wood was still blotched, the polished shine dulled by filth. She laid the pieces on a towel by the window to dry, her heart breaking at the thought of Ethan seeing them ruined. She didn't have to wait long. The doorbell rang, followed by the patter of small feet. Ethan burst in, his cheeks flushed from the cool air outside. "Grandma!" he called, flinging his arms around her waist. Emily hugged him tightly, pressing her lips to the top of his soft hair, inhaling the sweet smell of childhood shampoo. For a brief moment, she wished she could hold him there forever, shield him from everything. But innocence has sharp eyes. Ethan spotted the towel on the windowsill. His joy dimmed the instant he recognized the train. He patted over, his small hands hovering above the pieces as if he were afraid to touch them. "Grandma," he whispered, "why is it dirty? Why is it broken?" Emily swallowed hard. The truth burned on her tongue, but she couldn't bring herself to repeat the cruelty. "It just got a little messy, sweetheart. Grandma's trying to fix it." But Ethan wasn't fooled, his brow furrowed, his lips trembling as tears welled up. "Mom said it was junk." His voice cracked. "She threw it away, didn't she?" Emily froze. She wanted to deny it, to protect him from the ugliness, but the words tumbled out of him faster than she could stop them. "If my train is junk, does that mean Grandpa was junk too?" The question ripped through her like a lightning strike. Emily staggered, her hand flying to her chest. Ethan's wide, tear-filled eyes searched her face desperately for reassurance, for truth. "Oh no, my love," Emily whispered, gathering him into her arms. She sank into a chair, holding him against her heart. His small body shook with sobs, each one digging deeper into her soul. She rocked him gently, stroking his hair. "Your grandpa was never junk. He was the most important man in my life. And this train, it isn't junk either. It's part of him. Part of us." Ethan sniffled, his fists clutching her cardigan. Then why would she say that? Emily kissed his forehead, her throat tightening. Because sometimes people don't understand what really matters. They think things are only valuable if they're new or expensive. But love, history, family, those are the most precious things of all. The boy's sobs quieted, though tears still streaked his cheeks. He pulled back just enough to look up at her. "Can you fix it, Grandma?" Emily smiled through her own tears. "I'll do everything I can." As Ethan leaned against her shoulder, a steely calm settled over Emily. His innocent question had struck at the core of everything she feared, that Sophia's scorn, if left unchecked, would rewrite the story of their family. That Michael's memory would be reduced to dust, his legacy twisted into something disposable. Not while she was alive. Emily tightened her embrace, whispering into Ethan's hair. A promise meant as much for herself as for him. "No one will ever throw away our history again. Not your train, not your grandpa, not you." Ethan's breathing slowed, his small body finally relaxing in her arms. Emily sat there long after he drifted to sleep on her lap, staring out the window at the fading light. Her tears had dried, replaced by a fire she hadn't felt in years. She thought of Sophia's laugh echoing from the kitchen window, the word junk cutting like a blade. She thought of the whispered scheme about signing papers, about the house and the account. The pieces of a larger plan were beginning to align, and now she saw it clearly. The train wasn't just discarded out of spite, it was a test, a signal that they believed they could erase her, piece by piece. Emily stroked Ethan's hair, her voice low but firm. "They think they've won, but they don't know me. They don't know what I can do." Her gaze shifted toward Michael's study, the locked drawer with the brass key, the folder of documents that carried the weight of more than $2 million. For years, she had told herself peace was more important than pride. But peace built on humiliation wasn't peace at all, it was surrender. And Emily Reed was done surrendering. That night, after Ethan had gone home with his father, Emily returned to the towel by the window. She lifted the train pieces one by one, fitting them carefully together. The stains remained, but when the caboose clicked into place, the engraved letters gleamed faintly under the lamp. Ethan's name, Michael's legacy, hair vow. Emily pressed her hand against the cool brass engine and whispered into the quiet room. "This war isn't about money. It's about love, and love will not lose." The phone rang just as Emily was folding laundry in the quiet of her living room. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach tighten. Sophia. For a moment, she considered letting it go to voicemail, but avoiding her daughter-in-law would only invite more trouble. With a steadying breath, Emily answered. Emily, Sophia's voice was sugar, sweet, almost too sweet. I was just thinking about you. How are you feeling after Ethan's party? It was such a wonderful day, wasn't it? Emily pressed her lips together, remembering the train buried in garbage. Yes, she said evenly. Ethan seemed happy. Oh, absolutely, Sophia gushed. You're such a blessing to him. Honestly, I don't know what we'd do without you, and that's why I wanted to call. I have an idea. A surprise, really. Emily's pulse quickened. She'd heard that tone before, the way Sophia's words floated like perfume but carried the sting of vinegar. What kind of idea? Well, Sophia began, lowering her voice conspiratorially, David and I have been brainstorming something amazing. We want to open a creative studio for kids, an after-school space with art, music, robotics, you name it. A place where Ethan and his friends could really thrive. Isn't that exciting? Emily hesitated. On the surface, it sounded admirable. She pictured Ethan painting, tinkering, laughing with friends, but her instincts whispered caution. That sounds ambitious. Have you made a plan? Oh, we're working on it, Sophia said breezily. But we've already found the perfect space. Modern, open floor plan, tons of light. It's practically begging for us to transform it. The only thing holding us back is the financing. Banks can be so uptight, you know? There it was. The catch. Emily's heart sank as Sophia's words sharpened. That's why I thought of you, Sophia continued smoothly. It's such a small thing, really. Just a $50,000 loan. If you'd co-sign for us, the bank would approve it instantly. And of course, we'd handle the payments. You wouldn't have to lift a finger. It would mean the world to David and to Ethan. Emily gripped the phone tighter, her knuckles whitening. $50,000. That wasn't pocket change. It was more than she had ever made in an entire year teaching. And Sophia was treating it like a mere formality. Sophia, Emily said slowly, choosing her words with care. That's a great deal of money. Oh, come on, Sophia laughed lightly as if brushing away the objection. You're sitting on so much equity with this house, and of course Michael left you comfortable. It's not like $50,000 would even make a dent. Besides, think of it as an investment in Ethan's future. Don't you want to see him grow up with every opportunity? The words twisted like a knife. Guilt, obligation, manipulation, all wrapped in the language of family. Emily closed her eyes, hearing Ethan's voice echo in her memory. If my train is junk, does that mean Grandpa was junk too? She knew exactly what Sophia was doing. This wasn't about Ethan. It was about leverage, about turning her into a checkbook with a heartbeat. I'd have to think about it, Emily said at last, keeping her tone neutral. Of course, Sophia chirped, though Emily could hear the impatience under her polished veneer. But the sooner the better. The space won't stay on the market forever. David and I will bring the paperwork by this weekend, all ready for your signature. Just a quick little thing, we'll even bring dinner so you don't have to cook. Emily forced a smile into her voice. That's thoughtful. I'll see you then. As soon as the call ended, her hand trembled. She set the phone down on the counter and took a long, steadying breath. The walls of her home suddenly felt closer, the air heavier. This wasn't just a daughter-in-law with big dreams. This was a campaign, a strategy to chip away at her defenses until she surrendered everything. She walked into Michael's study and rested her hand on the locked drawer where the brass key lay hidden. Sophia thought she saw only a frail widow clinging to sentimental trinkets. But Michael had prepared her better than that. Looking out the window, Emily whispered to herself, "If they think I'll sign away my life's work, they don't know me at all." And in that moment she decided she would play along just long enough to learn exactly how far Sophia was willing to go. Saturday morning dawned quietly, but Emily felt no peace. Her kitchen smelled of fresh coffee, yet the taste turned bitter on her tongue. She kept replaying Sophia's voice from the phone call. Just a quick little thing. 50,000 is nothing for you. It wasn't a request. It was a directive dressed as kindness. As she cleared the breakfast table, a knock startled her. When she opened the door, she found her neighbor, Mr. Harris, standing on the porch. He was an older man, retired from the post office, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Morning, Emily," he said, shifting awkwardly. "I hate to intrude, but I thought you should know. The other day, after Ethan's party, I saw something." Emily's chest tightened. "What was it?" He hesitated, lowering his voice. "Your daughter-in-law. She walked right out with that fancy box you gave Ethan, and a minute later I saw her dump it straight into your trash bin. Looked deliberate to me." For a moment, Emily couldn't breathe. Hearing it confirmed by someone else made her humiliation sting all over again. "Thank you, Mr. Harris," she managed, her voice trembling. "That means a great deal to me." He gave her a sympathetic nod. "People think neighbors don't notice, but we do. You take care of yourself." Then he shuffled off, leaving Emily with her heart pounding. She closed the door and leaned against it. A witness. It wasn't just in her head. Sophia had treated her love, her history, like garbage, and now Emily had corroboration. Her eyes drifted to the small white device mounted beside the door, the video doorbell camera. A thought sparked. She tapped her phone, opened the app, and scrolled back through the footage. There it was, clear as daylight. Sophia stepped outside, the ribboned box tucked under her arm. She glanced around, then flipped open the trash lid and shoved the gift inside. A second later, she smoothed her blouse and walked back inside, her smile intact. Emily's stomach lurched. The casualness of it, the calculated cruelty, was worse than she remembered. But she pressed save, downloading the video to her phone. She replayed it again and again until the anger in her chest solidified into something colder. Resolve. Still, part of her mind whispered, "What if they say you're exaggerating? What if they claim you planted the box yourself?" Emily needed more. She hurried to her sewing room, where the empty packaging still lay. Opening the original box, she pulled out the small envelope where she'd stored the receipt and certificate of authenticity. Her fingers brushed against the AirTag she had tucked inside the caboose. Her pulse quickened. She opened the tracking app. A blinking dot appeared on the map, marking the last known location, the edge of her driveway, the trash bin, exactly where she had found it. The evidence was stacking up like bricks in a wall. Emily set everything on the table, the receipt showing the $300 purchase, the certificate proving its collector's value, the AirTag record, the video clip, and now the neighbor's testimony. Piece by piece, she was building a fortress of truth. That evening, David and Sophia arrived for dinner, carrying takeout containers and smiling, as if nothing were wrong. Sophia chattered about the studio project, weaving her vision of bright classrooms and excited children. "We'll bring the papers tomorrow, Emily," she said, her tone silky. "You'll see it's not just good for us, it's good for Ethan too." Emily nodded calmly, keeping her fury hidden. She poured tea, passed plates, and listened while they spun dreams that weren't dreams at all, but schemes. She thought of the video on her phone, the AirTag data, the witness across the street. She thought of Ethan's small voice. "If my train is junk, does that mean Grandpa was junk too?" For the first time, Emily didn't feel powerless. When dinner ended and the dishes were cleared, she excused herself to the sewing room. Alone, she placed the train pieces back into their box and tied the red ribbon once more. It wasn't clean, not fully, but it looked intact enough to serve its purpose. She set her phone beside it. The video paused at the exact frame of Sophia dropping the gift into the trash. Then she rested her hand on Michael's study door, feeling the strength of the man who had always believed in preparation. "They think they've cornered me," she whispered into the stillness. "But I've been watching, and now I'm ready." In the quiet of her home, with evidence in hand and resolve hardening in her chest, Emily knew the next move would be hers. Sunday morning sunlight streamed through the curtains, but Emily woke with a heaviness pressing on her chest. The night before, she had stared at the paused video of Sophia tossing the train into the trash until her eyes blurred. Now, the images played again and again in her mind. The dismissive flick of Sophia's wrist, the lid slamming shut, her smile intact when she walked back inside. Emily sat at the kitchen table with her phone and the small white AirTag cradled in her palm. Michael's voice seemed to echo from the past. Always track what matters. He had been meticulous, always one step ahead. She tapped the app, watching the map load. A line of blue dots appeared, marking the AirTag's movements, from the living room to the driveway to the trash bin. It was irrefutable proof that the train had been carried outside, not misplaced. Her heart beat faster as she scrolled through the timeline. Each data point was a nail in the coffin of Sophia's lies. Emily laid the AirTag beside the certificate of authenticity and the purchase receipt. Then she opened the saved video clip, replaying it once more. The angle was clear. Sophia's face is visible. The box is unmistakable. Together, the pieces formed a story too strong to deny. Yet Emily knew evidence alone would not be enough. Sophia was skilled at twisting narratives, at turning blame into guilt. If Emily confronted her recklessly, she would be painted as the bitter, fragile old woman. No, this required precision. She looked at the photo on the wall, a framed picture of Michael holding David as a boy. Michael's eyes sparkled with pride, the same pride Emily had once seen in Ethan's face when he unwrapped the train. "You always had the clearest judgment," Michael had told her. Emily pressed her fingertips to the glass, whispering, "Then guide me now." By mid-afternoon, she had a plan. First, she would let David and Sophia bring the paperwork. Let them believe she was wavering. Let them believe the performance of kindness and family obligation was working. Second, she would choose the moment at dinner, with both of them seated, no escape from her dining room table. The place where every meal carried history, where the weight of family memories hung in the air. Third, she would reveal her evidence piece by piece, each layer tightening the noose, the receipt, the AirTag log, and finally, the video. She would make them confront their own betrayal, not in whispers behind a kitchen window, but in the silence of exposure. As the sun lowered, Emily rehearsed in her mind. She imagined Sophia's face when the video froze on her tossing the box. She imagined David's eyes dropping to the floor, the boy who once curled up on her lap with picture books, now reduced to a man too weak to defend his own mother. The thought cut deep, but Emily steeled herself. This wasn't just about shame. It was about power. They wanted her signature. They wanted her house. They wanted Michael's account. But she had something far stronger: proof, resolve, and the law on her side. That evening, Ethan visited briefly with David. The boy ran into her arms, pressing his cheek against her chest. "Grandma, did you fix it?" he asked, glancing hopefully at the box on the counter. Emily smoothed his hair. "I cleaned it as best I could. It's not perfect, but it's still ours. And no one can take that away." Ethan's smile returned, small but brave. He hugged her tight before David ushered him out with a distracted, "Come on, buddy, we're late." When the door closed, Emily turned back to the train. She retied the satin ribbon, her hands steady now. The ruined toy was no longer just a symbol of loss. It was bait, evidence, and a weapon, all in one. She carried it to the dining room and set it neatly at the center of the table. Then she placed her phone beside it, the video cued to the exact frame of Sophia lifting the lid of the trash bin. The screen glowed faintly in the dimming light. Emily stood back, surveying the scene. Tomorrow evening, when David and Sophia returned with their stack of papers and their polished smiles, they would find more than dinner waiting. They would find judgment. She drew the curtains, the room falling into shadow. For the first time in weeks, she felt something other than dread. It was focused, sharp, and unwavering. "They think I'm cornered," Emily murmured into the silence. "But tomorrow they'll learn I've been watching all along." And with that, she turned off the lamp, leaving only the faint glow of her phone screen silent, damning, and ready. The smell of roasted chicken filled the dining room. Emily set the table with deliberate care, china plates polished, silverware gleaming, glasses filled with water and a splash of lemon. At the center, neatly placed beside the satin ribbon train box, lay her phone, dark screen waiting for a single touch to light it up. When the doorbell rang, she already knew what faces she would see. Sophia, radiant in a cream blouse, her smile wide and practiced. David, clutching a leather folder, his eyes darting nervously as though searching for an escape route. "Emily," Sophia sang as she stepped inside, "you shouldn't have gone to the trouble of cooking. We brought dessert, your favorite cheesecake." She placed the box on the counter like a peace offering. Emily nodded politely, masking the fire in her chest. "How thoughtful. Let's sit." They gathered at the table. Sophia launched into conversation, describing color palettes for her imagined children's studio, talking about branding, logos, and even marketing campaigns. David nodded dutifully, opening the folder just enough for Emily to glimpse the thick stack of papers. "And here it is," Sophia said at last, sliding the folder across the table. "Just a few signatures, Emily, and we can secure the space. Imagine how proud Ethan will be when his name is on the wall of the first creative hub in town. Emily rested her hand lightly on the folder but did not open it. Instead, she glanced at the ribbon box between them. "Funny," she said softly. "How much names matter, don't you think?" Sophia blinked. "Excuse me?" Emily untied the ribbon, revealing the train inside. The brass engine gleamed faintly, though stains still marred its surface. "Ethan's name is carved here," she continued, tapping the caboose. "Michael's memory lives here too. It was a gift from me. And yet," David shifted uneasily. "Mom, we talked about this." But Emily pressed her phone's screen. The video lit up, sound filling the room. There was Sophia, in perfect clarity, walking down the driveway with the box. She glanced around, opened the lid of the trash bin, and shoved the gift inside. The lid slammed shut. The clip ended. Silence swallowed the table. Sophia's face drained of color before flushing crimson. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, her smile gone. "You're spying on me? Invading my privacy?" Emily's voice was calm, almost gentle. "It's my house, Sophia. My camera. My gift." David rubbed his temples, his voice low. "Sophia." But his wife's fury ignited. "So what? It was clutter. Junk. Ethan has more than enough toys. We don't need your antiques collecting dust in our home." Ethan's words echoed in Emily's mind. "If my train is junk, does that mean Grandpa was junk too?" Her chest tightened, but she held her composure. "You didn't just throw away a toy," Emily said, her voice steady. "You threw away a piece of my husband, of our family's history. And you did it with laughter." Sophia scoffed, but her hands shook. "This is absurd. You're being dramatic." "We're trying to build something real here, for our family, for Ethan's future. You should be grateful we even included you." "Grateful?" Emily repeated, her eyes locking on Sophia's. "For being lied to, manipulated, for being treated like a bank account instead of a mother?" David finally raised his head, his voice trembling. "Mom, please, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just sign the papers and we can move forward." Emily's heart ached at the weakness in his eyes, but she did not waver. "No, David, moving forward doesn't mean erasing the past, and it doesn't mean surrendering to greed." Sophia slammed her palm against the table, rattling the silverware. "You're standing in the way of your son's future. This house, that account, it's wasted on you. You're old, Emily. You don't need it anymore. We do." For a moment, the mask was gone. No more sugary words, no polished charm. Just raw hunger, sharp and ugly. Emily leaned back, her face unreadable. "Thank you," she said quietly. Sophia blinked, confused. "For what?" "For finally telling the truth." The silence that followed was heavier than stone. David looked between them, torn but mute. Sophia's chest heaved, her hands clenched tight in her lap. Emily folded the video back into her phone, slid the train box closer to her, and picked up her fork as if nothing had happened. Dinner continued, but the balance had shifted. Emily no longer felt the sting of humiliation. She felt control. They thought they had cornered her. But tonight, in her dining room, under the soft glow of the chandelier, Emily had shown them she was not prey. She was the one setting the trap. The house was silent after dinner. David and Sophia had stormed upstairs, their voices muffled but sharp through the thin walls. Emily remained at the dining table, her hands folded calmly over the satin ribbon of the train box. Her pulse no longer raced. She felt something new now, clarity. For weeks, she had been reacting. To Sophia's insults, to David's silence, to Ethan's heartbreak. Tonight was different. Tonight, she had forced the mask off. Sophia's hunger for control had been exposed, and David's weakness lay bare. Emily stood, gathered the dishes with steady hands, and washed them in the sink. Each clink of porcelain felt like punctuation. The war had shifted, no longer defense, now offense. She dried her hands, turned off the kitchen light, and walked down the hall to Michael's study. She hadn't stepped inside for months, not because it was locked, but because the air there still held him. The faint smell of cedar, old books, and his cologne lingered like a memory too sharp to touch. But tonight, she needed his presence, his foresight. Emily flicked on the brass lamp, its warm glow spilling across the mahogany desk. She pulled the chair back and sat, smoothing her hand over the leather blotter. Then she reached for the bottom drawer on the right, the one Michael had always kept locked. From her cardigan pocket, she drew the small brass key. Her hand trembled only once before sliding it into the lock. A click echoed in the stillness. She pulled the drawer open. Inside lay a slim, steel lockbox. Michael's handwriting labeled it simply, "Trust and Investments." Emily lifted the box onto the desk, her breath shallow but steady. She turned the second key, the one she had kept hidden inside her sewing basket for years. The lid creaked open. Papers, neatly stacked, greeted her, folders marked with dates, accounts, and signatures. At the very top was a letter written in Michael's careful script. "Emily, if you are reading this, then you know foresight is our greatest shield. What we built is not just money, it is protection. For you, for Ethan, for whatever storms may come. Trust your instincts. They are sharper than you believe." Emily's throat tightened, but she forced herself onward. She flipped through the documents, quarterly statements, bonds, stock portfolios. Numbers climbed in the margins, higher than she remembered. $2.1 million in total, carefully managed, growing still. Her breath caught. For years, she had thought of the portfolio as comfortable security, enough to keep her steady in retirement, to leave a small cushion for Ethan one day. But this was a fortress, and Michael had known it. She set the statements aside and pulled out the thickest folder, embossed with the title, "The Whitmore Family Trust." Inside were clauses, signatures, legalese she recognized from long nights when Michael had explained their plans. Sole authority rested with her. No one, not David, not Sophia, could touch it without her explicit direction. Emily exhaled slowly. The power wasn't just hers to guard, it was hers to wield. Her eyes flicked to the study's window, where the faint reflection of her own face stared back. Sophia thought she was fighting a frail widow. David thought she was too sentimental to resist. But both of them had underestimated the archivist in her, the woman who remembered everything and preserved what mattered. She gathered the key documents into a leather folder of her own, sliding them neatly inside. Then she wrote a note to herself on a yellow pad. "Call Arthur Finch, estate lawyer. Review trust clauses for modification. Secure the house deed into an irrevocable trust. Establish a scholarship in Michael's name. Exclude Sophia explicitly." Each line steadied her breathing. Each step built the framework of her retaliation. From upstairs came the faint sound of raised voices, Sophia hissing accusations, David stumbling with excuses. Emily didn't need to hear the words. She knew the script. They would blame each other for her refusal, then unite again in greed. It didn't matter. The path ahead was hers alone. She closed the lockbox, slid it back into the drawer, and turned the key. But the leather folder she kept in her lap. That was her weapon now. Before turning off the lamp, Emily whispered into the quiet study, "You prepared me well, Michael. Now it's my turn to protect what we built." As she left the room, her shadow stretched long across the hallway wall. For the first time in months, she didn't feel small inside her own home. She felt formidable. The trap was no longer theoretical. It was in motion. And Sophia had no idea the ground beneath her feet was already shifting. The following Tuesday, Emily dressed with deliberate care. She chose a dark navy blazer she hadn't worn since Michael's memorial, pressed slacks, and a single strand of pearls. Her reflection in the mirror surprised her. The timid widow was gone. In her place stood a woman preparing for battle. She tucked the leather folder beneath her arm and drove into town. Her destination, the offices of Finch and Associates, a dignified brick building with brass letters polished to a shine. Arthur Finch had been Michael's trusted colleague and friend for decades. More than once, he had joined them for Sunday dinner, swapping stories of courtrooms and history books. When Emily stepped into his office, Arthur rose from behind his mahogany desk. His white hair and sharp eyes carried the weight of long experience. "Emily," he greeted warmly, extending both hands. "It's been too long. Sit down, please. What brings you here?" She placed the leather folder on his desk. "Arthur, I need your help, and your absolute discretion." His brow furrowed, but he nodded. "Always." Emily opened the folder, spreading the documents across the polished wood. Portfolio statements, trust clauses, Michael's handwritten letter. "They want it," she said quietly. "David and his wife. They've been circling me for months. Schemes, manipulations, even insults. They tried to trick me into signing loan papers. They think this house, this account, everything Michael built, it's already theirs." Arthur adjusted his glasses, scanning the documents with practiced efficiency. His silence carried the weight of truth. Finally, he leaned back. "Legally, Emily, you hold absolute control. Michael structured it carefully. They have no claim, none. Unless you sign something, they cannot touch a penny." Relief loosened the tightness in her chest, but only slightly. "That's why I came. I don't just want to protect it. I want to build a wall they'll never climb. And I want Ethan provided for without Sophia's hands anywhere near him." Arthur's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then you're speaking my language. An irrevocable trust. Once we place assets into it, no one can alter its course. Not you, not a judge, not your son or his wife. It becomes ironclad." Emily leaned forward. "Show me how." For the next hour, Arthur laid out the framework. The portfolio over $2 million would be transferred into a new charitable trust. Its purpose, a scholarship fund in Michael's name, supporting students of history and archival studies for generations. The house would be placed into a personal residence trust. Emily would have lifetime rights, untouchable. Upon her passing, it would be sold, with proceeds split, 80% to the scholarship, 20% to fund a managed annuity for David. "And Sophia?" Arthur asked gently. Emily's voice was firm. "I want her name written in black and white. Explicit exclusion. She inherits nothing, now or ever." Arthur's pen scratched across his yellow legal pad. "We'll make it airtight. Not a clause she can contest." The more they talked, the stronger Emily felt. Each line, each clause, was another stone in the fortress wall Michael had begun and she was now completing. By the time Arthur stacked the papers neatly, she no longer felt like a woman defending scraps. She felt like a guardian of legacy. Arthur slid the stack toward her. "Are you ready, Emily? These signatures will reshape everything." Her hand hovered over the pen. She thought of Ethan clutching the ruined train. She thought of Sophia's sneer, "We don't need her junk." She thought of Michael's steady voice in his letter, "Trust your instincts." Emily picked up the pen. Her signature flowed strong and steady, page after page. With each stroke, her shoulders lifted, the weight of months falling away. She was not surrendering. She was claiming victory. When it was done, Arthur gathered the documents. "Congratulations," he said softly. "Your fortress stands." Emily rose, shaking his hand. "This isn't just protection, Arthur. This is justice." As she left the office, sunlight broke through the clouds, spilling warmth onto the street. For the first time in months, Emily inhaled deeply. The air smelled lighter, cleaner. She no longer feared what David and Sophia might demand. The battle had shifted. The walls were built. And now, she was ready for the day they realized they had lost everything. The following Sunday evening, Emily was summoned to the living room. She already knew something was coming. The tone of David's voice at breakfast had been too careful, Sophia's smiles too polished. Still, she carried herself with composure, smoothing her cardigan as she entered. The scene was set like a play. Tea steeped in her best china pot, cookies arranged neatly on a silver tray. On the coffee table sat a slim stack of papers, topped with a pen. "Mom," David began, his voice soft, almost pleading. "We wanted to have a family chat. Nothing heavy, just planning." Sophia leaned forward, her hands folded delicately in her lap. "Emily, dear, we worry about you. You've been so quiet lately. We just want to make sure you're taken care of, that your bills and accounts are managed properly. These forms," she gestured at the papers, "they're just a formality. Power of attorney. It would allow David and me to help you manage things. Pay the utilities, talk to the bank. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing." Emily studied the papers without touching them. The words blurred into one truth: control. She lifted her gaze to David. "And this is what your father would have wanted?" David swallowed hard. "Yes, he'd want us to be looking after you." For a moment, Emily almost pitied him. He had no idea how much his words betrayed him. Michael would never have wanted this. His life's work funneled into the hands of a manipulative woman who laughed as she tossed history in the trash. Emily picked up her teacup instead of the pen. She sipped slowly, deliberately, letting the silence stretch. The only sound was the faint tick of the clock on the mantel. "That's very thoughtful of you both," she said at last, her voice calm, almost serene. "But it's not necessary." Sophia's smile froze. "Not necessary? I've already taken care of everything," Emily continued, setting her cup back in its saucer. "I met with Arthur Finch last week. The trust has been restructured. My affairs are in perfect order." The color drained from David's face. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Sophia blinked rapidly, then leaned forward, her voice sharp despite the sugar it was dipped in. "Arthur Finch? You went to a lawyer without telling us?" Emily's eyes never wavered. "Yes, because it is my estate, my responsibility, and I have made the arrangements I see fit." David finally found his voice, laced with panic. "Mom, what did you do? What did you sign?" Emily placed her hands neatly in her lap. "I secured Michael's legacy. I secured this home, and I ensured Ethan will always be provided for. Everything else has been taken care of." Sophia's mask shattered. She shot up from the sofa, her voice rising. "You can't do that. You don't understand what you've done. That money, that house, it should be for your son, for his family, for us." "For Ethan," Emily corrected, her voice low but firm. "Not for you." Sophia's chest heaved, her fists clenched tight. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? You're ruining our future." Emily leaned back, her face composed. "No. I've simply ensured my family's history won't be sold off for SUVs and empty business schemes. You may call it ruin. I call it protection." David buried his face in his hands, whispering, "Oh God." Sophia turned on him, her fury spilling over. "Do something. She's cutting us off and you're just sitting there?" But David said nothing. The silence was crushing. Emily stood, smoothing her sweater, her voice calm as still water. "This conversation is over. The decisions are final. You will not bully me into undoing them." She walked toward the door, her steps steady, her back straight. Behind her, Sophia's voice cracked into a shriek. "You'll regret this, Emily. You can't just erase us." Emily paused at the threshold, then turned her head slightly. "I didn't erase you. You erased yourself." And with that, she left them in the living room, the untouched papers glaring back like evidence of their failure. That night, the house grew thick with silence. Emily sat in the sunroom with her knitting needles, but she wasn't truly knitting. Her hands moved automatically, a disguise for listening. Through the thin walls of the old house, voices leaked down the hallway from the guest room. David's voice was low, tight with panic. "She went to Finch, Sophia. It's done. She's locked it all away. We'll never see a dime." Sophia hissed back, her words sharp as broken glass. "Don't say that. She's bluffing. She can't cut us out completely. And free." "She can," David groaned. "It's her trust. She has sole authority. Arthur Finch would make sure of it." A pause. Then Sophia's fury spilled out. "Then we make her change her mind. Fear, guilt, whatever it takes. She's old. She can't fight forever." Emily's fingers tightened around the knitting needles. Her heart hurt to hear her son's weakness, but the ache was numbed by clarity. They weren't grieving lost opportunity. They were strategizing, plotting their next strike. She rose silently, setting the half-finished scarf aside. Enough hiding, enough reacting. From this moment, she would stop being the quiet target in her own home. The next morning, she began her preparations. First, she returned to Michael's study. She pulled open the drawer and retrieved the leather folder Arthur had given her, now fat with notarized documents. She placed it in her handbag, the weight both literal and symbolic. Then she slipped her phone into her pocket, its gallery stocked with damning evidence, the neighbor's testimony, the AirTag log, the video of Sophia at the trash bin. Second, she made calls. A discreet conversation with her accountant, a scheduled meeting with the director of the local historical society where she would announce the scholarship fund, and a quiet word with a trusted friend at church who served on the university board. Each call was another stone laid in the foundation of her counterattack. By noon, Emily felt the shift in the air. This wasn't secrecy anymore. This was momentum. Meanwhile, upstairs, the whispers turned to arguments. Sophia's voice rose through the floorboards, sharp enough for Emily to catch fragments. "You promised me she'd sign." "I thought she would," David shouted back. "But she's stronger than she looks." "Stronger?" Sophia spat. "She's nothing without us. An old woman clinging to her past. We can break her." Emily smiled grimly from the kitchen as she stirred a pot of soup. They still don't understand. They thought she was sentimental, fragile. But she was Michael's partner, and Michael had raised her to see history not as nostalgia, but as power. That evening, she cooked deliberately, filling the house with the scent of rosemary and garlic. When she called them down for dinner, David and Sophia entered stiffly, their faces taut with suspicion. The meal passed in strained silence until Sophia broke it with false cheer. "Emily, I've been thinking we should all go away for a weekend. Clear the air, somewhere by the coast. Doesn't that sound nice?" Emily placed her spoon down gently. "No," she said simply. Sophia blinked, caught off guard. "No? No trips, no papers, no more conversations about finances." Emily's voice was calm, but her gaze was unyielding. "From now on, things will be transparent. I've already scheduled meetings with lawyers, the university, and people who matter. The days of whispering and scheming are over." David paled. "Mom, you don't have to." "Yes," Emily interrupted. "I do, for Ethan, for Michael, for myself." Sophia's mask cracked. She forced a smile, but her eyes glittered with rage. "So that's your plan? To humiliate us? To parade your decisions around town?" Emily lifted her napkin, dabbed her lips, and looked her daughter-in-law squarely in the eye. "Not humiliation, Sophia. Truth. And if the truth humiliates you, then perhaps you should ask yourself why." The silence that followed was suffocating. David stared at his plate, unable to lift his eyes. Sophia's hand trembled around her wineglass. Emily remained composed, the picture of quiet authority. That night, as she climbed into bed, she allowed herself a deep, steady breath. For the first time in months, she didn't feel hunted. She felt like the one setting the terms. Tomorrow, the whispers would end. Tomorrow, her counterattack would begin in the open. Sunday morning sunlight streamed through the stained-glass windows of the old church hall. The congregation had gathered for their monthly fellowship breakfast, a mix of chatter, clinking dishes, and the smell of strong coffee. Emily stood near the front, her hands clasped around a small stack of papers. Her heart beat steadily, not with fear but with anticipation. Arthur Finch had encouraged her to do this publicly. "Transparency is your shield," he had said. "If everyone knows, there's no room for manipulation." When the pastor tapped the microphone and introduced her, the room quieted. Faces turned toward her, old friends, neighbors, Ethan's Sunday school teacher, and at the back, slipping in late, were David and Sophia. Emily saw Sophia's tight smile falter as she realized why she had been asked to come. Emily cleared her throat. "Many of you knew my husband, Michael. He believed in history, in the value of memory, in the responsibility we carry to those who come after us. In his honor, and with the guidance of Arthur Finch, I've established the Michael and Emily Whitmore Scholarship Fund." Murmurs rippled through the room. Emily unfolded her papers, her voice steady. "The fund, valued at over $2 million, will provide scholarships to students who dream of studying history, preservation, and education. It will last for generations, a legacy not of money spent, but of futures built." Polite applause swelled, warm, and genuine. Tears pricked Emily's eyes, but she stood tall, her chin lifted. She continued, "I've also secured my home through a trust. I will live there for the rest of my life, undisturbed. Afterward, proceeds from the house will continue to fund the scholarship, and for my son, David, I've created a lifetime annuity. He will always have stability, but not at the cost of this family's legacy." Gasps fluttered among the pews. Emily didn't need to look at the back of the room to feel Sophia's rage radiating like heat. She placed her hands gently on the podium. "And I want to be clear. This was my decision. No one coerced me. No one influenced me. I made these choices to honor Michael, to protect Ethan, and to ensure the values we hold dear are never lost." The applause this time was louder, stronger. A few friends stood, clapping with tears on their cheeks. Emily's heart swelled not with pride, but with relief. The fortress was no longer hidden in Arthur's office or Michael's study. It stood tall, undeniable, in the eyes of her entire community. At the back, David looked as though the floor had dropped beneath him. His face was pale, his shoulders slumped. Sophia, however, was crimson with fury. She whispered furiously in his ear, her hands gripping his arm so tightly that he winced. After the service, people surrounded Emily, offering hugs, congratulations, and promises of support. She smiled, accepted each one, her strength buoyed by their kindness. When at last she stepped outside into the crisp air, Sophia was waiting near the steps. Her smile was brittle, her eyes sharp. David lingered behind her, silent, ashamed. "That was quite the performance," Sophia said, her voice dripping acid, "parading your money like a prize pig at the fair." Emily adjusted her scarf, her expression serene. "It wasn't a performance. It was a declaration." "You humiliated us," Sophia hissed, "in front of everyone. Do you have any idea what people will say?" "They'll say the truth," Emily replied softly. "That Michael and I built something worth protecting, and that I refuse to let greed destroy it." Sophia's mask cracked, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "You think this is over? You've made enemies, Emily. You'll regret crossing me." Emily met her gaze without flinching. "No, Sophia. The only regret in this family is yours for thinking love and legacy could ever be treated as junk." Sophia faltered, her mouth opening then closing with no retort. She turned sharply, yanking David's arm, and stormed toward the parking lot. David cast one last look at his mother, his eyes filled with sorrow and something else, perhaps shame, perhaps relief. Then he followed his wife into the car. Emily stood on the steps as the engine roared to life and sped away. Around her, the autumn leaves swirled in the breeze, catching the morning light. For the first time in months, she felt entirely free. The fortress was built. The truth declared. Whatever storms came next, she knew she had already won the most important battle, reclaiming her voice. The days following Emily's announcement rippled with whispers across town. At the grocery store, at the church, even at the library, neighbors came up to congratulate her. "Michael would be proud," one woman said with tears in her eyes. "You've given a gift to generations." But in the Whitmore house, the atmosphere curdled into something darker. Sophia no longer bothered with her polished mask. She stomped through rooms like a storm, slamming doors, muttering curses under her breath. At night, Emily heard her pacing the guest room, her voice raised in bitter arguments with David. "You let her do this," Sophia shrieked one evening. "You let your mother humiliate us in front of everyone. Do you know how people look at me now? Like I'm some greedy fool." David's response was muffled, heavy with defeat. "What was I supposed to do, Sophia? She planned it all without us. It's over." "Over?" Sophia spat. "It's only over if we let it be. We'll find another way." But her voice cracked, and Emily knew Sophia wasn't plotting anymore. She was unraveling. 2 days later, Emily found David sitting alone at the kitchen table, his face buried in his hands. The lines of worry carved deep into his features made him look far older than his years. He didn't notice Emily at first. When he finally lifted his head, his eyes were red. "Mom," he whispered, "I don't even know who I am anymore. I thought I was protecting my family, but all I did was follow her lead." Emily's heart ached. He was still her son, the boy who once brought her wildflowers clutched in muddy fists. But she didn't move to comfort him. Not yet. "David," she said gently, "you still have a choice. You can step out of her shadow. You can build something real for yourself, for Ethan." He nodded, a tear sliding down his cheek. "I don't know if I can." "You can," Emily said firmly, "but it will take strength the kind your father lived by, the kind Ethan needs." As if summoned by his name, Ethan bounded into the room after school, his backpack slung crookedly over one shoulder. "Grandma," he called, running straight into her arms. His small frame pressed against her, warm and solid. "I showed my teacher the train," he said proudly, holding up the caboose Emily had cleaned and polished. "I told her Grandpa made it special. She said it's the most important show and tell she's ever seen." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She hugged him tighter, whispering, "It is special, Ethan, and so are you. Never forget that." The boy tilted his head, studying her with wide, earnest eyes. "Grandma, will people always try to throw away important things?" Emily swallowed hard. "Some will, but it's our job to protect what matters. Love, family, truth, those things aren't junk. no matter what anyone says." He nodded solemnly, as though storing the lesson deep inside his young heart. That night, after Ethan had gone to bed, Emily sat by the fireplace with the quilt draped across her lap and the train set displayed proudly on the mantel. The house was quiet, truly quiet for the first time in months. Sophia had retreated upstairs, her energy spent. David stayed in his room, wrestling with his conscience. Emily traced the worn flannel patch of Michael's shirt sewn into the quilt, her heart steady. Winning hadn't been about locking away money or excluding Sophia. It had been about this moment, the certainty that Ethan's memory of her would not be shaped by cruelty or lies, but by love that endured. The true victory was not revenge. It was preservation. She whispered into the firelight, "Michael, our legacy is safe. Ethan knows who we are. That's all that matters." For the first time in what felt like years, Emily allowed herself to lean back, close her eyes, and rest. Not as prey, not as a gatekeeper, but as a grandmother who had fought and won. She had the right for her grandson to believe in love that could never be discarded. 2 weeks later, the suitcases appeared in the hallway. No dramatic speeches, no pleas, just the silent scraping of zippers. David's shoulders were slumped, his eyes hollow with regret. Sophia didn't look at Emily as she dragged the luggage out the door. Her face was hard, brittle, a mask of fury barely holding together. Emily stood at the window, watching their car disappear down the street. She felt no triumph, no bitterness, only peace. The storm had passed, and the house was hers again. That weekend, with help from a neighbor, she carried her mother's cherrywood furniture back into the guest room, polishing the carved handles until they gleamed. The room glowed warm again, alive with memory. No longer a sterile cage, it was once more a sanctuary. On the mantel, the quilt hung folded with care, and the train set stood proudly. Its brass engine catching the afternoon Sunday, Ethan often sat by the fire, playing quietly, his smile unguarded. One rainy afternoon, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. Inside was a handwritten letter from a young student, the first recipient of the Michael and Emily Whitmore Scholarship. "Because of you, I can stay in school. Because of you, I believe history and my future matter. Thank you for believing in me." Tears blurred Emily's eyes. The legacy was real. Michael's foresight, her resolve, Ethan's hope, all woven together into something unbreakable. She whispered into the quiet, "Nothing precious will ever be treated as junk again. Oh, if you believe that love, memories, and respect should never be treated as worthless, hit subscribe to join us in sharing more stories like this. Every bit of your support is a reminder that we all deserve to be valued."